Okay. This is Tim Madden from the Gadsden Public Library, the East Gadsden branch. Shonda Williams is the branch manager. Craig Scott is my director. And in recognition of Black History Month, we would like to take this opportunity to call our native son. Although he wasn't born in Alabama, he spent a lot of time in the state. Uh, he's a veteran of the United States Army. Reverend John James, he has some personal recollections and reflections that he would like to share with us. And so at this time, we're going to allow him to come in his own way. Reverend John James is the esteemed pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Ohatchee, Alabama. If I read all of his accolades and accomplishments, we would be here for quite a while. But we're glad and pleased to have Reverend James come in his own way. Reverend John James.
Good afternoon. I'm on for this experience to come for. I don't consider my life to be anything that anybody would be interested in, but my whole life contribute to the power and to the grace of God that I am what I am and how He has blessed me and how He has brought me. So my whole story is basically about the goodness of the Lord. I was born in 1944 in a little town in Tennessee called Glendale. In the country, and we were born there. And before I was old enough to know anything about Glendale, my father moved. He was a jack of all trades, and so we moved to a place called Columbia, Tennessee, which is about 45, 47 miles from Nashville, south of Nashville, 65. We were doing. I was there my preschool year, and did start school there at the age of 6, and it was to a two-room school. They went from the first to the fourth grade, and then from the fifth to the eighth grade. While there at school, going to school, we had to walk to school, which was right around the mile. While the white kids had school buses that they could ride. That's my first indication of knowing that there was some difference between us, as people say. While we were during my first grade year, my older sister, Irene, went into the hospital, and she stayed there over a year, right around there. They never did find out what was wrong with her. She died there. And then the sister that's right above me also got sick during that same time, went to the hospital and stayed about 6 months or so. Now, that might be off a few months, a few days on the time, because I'm 6 years old, 7 during this time. But she did recover, and she is still alive now. But now, my father, when I was about 7 years old, moved us again to a place called Moore Pike, which is about 5 miles from Columbia. And Columbia is about 45 miles from Nashville, south of Nashville. And while there, my father then began to teach me. We were sharecropping there, and he began to take me to the field with him and teach me how to weed out tobacco and how to set out tobacco and how to ride a mule-drawn hay machine. And that was really was started about 8, and when I was about 9, he started hiring me out to tobacco field plant in that area. I made $2 a day. We would go from 6 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the evening. And at first, when we first started, my father was with me. But after just before I was 10, they started sending me out to the field by myself, and I would stay there all day. And at that time, I was probably making that $2 a day, and I did that for the remaining of the time we were there. But one of the stories of while I was there, everybody that hears the story wants me to tell it again. When I was about 10, my father, the man who owned the hayfield, carried me off to a hayfield, and at first we were walking down the road, and then seemed like for no reason at all, we just took off into the woods, took a right turn off into the woods. There was no path or nothing, and they would walk a while and turn left, and walk another ways and turn right, and we just weaved our way through those woods. And I my father had a habit of leaving me in the field by myself. So I said, man, if he leaves me in these woods by myself, I wouldn't know how to get out. So I tried to scuff the ground up with a lot of pine needles, on the ground. And even though I scuffed them up, it really didn't make a big mark in the ground. So I just gave up on it and just hoping that I try to remember how to get out of that if he left me there by myself. But lo and behold, we walked about a mile, get through those woods, and we come to an open place, and there was a hayfield there. And they hooked the mules up to the hayfield. My father went around and uh, told me to get on. And he stood there and watched me. I said, well, he's going to stay here with me. But after I went around twice, he said, when you're finished, unhook the mules and come home. And I opened to tell him I didn't know how to get home. But, well, in Tennessee, there was not a friend relationship between children. And I was so proud of my father. I wanted him to be proud of me, and I didn't want him to know that I didn't know how to get out, because he had bragged with other folks that if you ever go to the place, you need to know. Go, you should be able to find your way out. So I didn't say anything, but I kind of kept an eye on where we went into the field. I cut the field, and all the time, that's one time that I wasn't in a hurry to finish. But it was getting dark, it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so by the time I finished, and when I got back to the area that we went in, I was thinking that maybe we could follow the mule tracks out. And when I got to the place there, and lo and behold, I looked down at the ground and saw mule tracks. I said, man, I got to make it. We went about 50 feet into the woods, and in the pasture, all those tracks run out. And so I tried to figure out how to continue through the woods. I said, no, if I get out in these woods and I'm going the wrong way, nobody ever finds me. So I would turn around and go back to where I started and try to figure out where. Every time I would move forward, the mule would move forward. But every time I stopped, the mule behind me would stop. I did that about 10 times, if not more. And finally, I figured out. I said, I got scared, and I was saying, what am I going to do? And I remember hearing a conversation between my father and the same man. Field I was on, the Perkins said that when it's time to go home, the mules know how to go home. I didn't know whether that was so or not. I'm only 10 years old. I'm out there, and I shouldn't even have heard that conversation, because at that time, children were not allowed to be around grown folks, not listen, take part in grown folks' conversation. Right. But somehow I heard that. I don't remember any other conversation ever that had between grown folks except that one. That God brought that. I'm gonna have to say God brought that back to my memory. Mm-hmm. Get on the mule. Mm-hmm. So I got around the stump, climbed up on the mule, and before I sit down, they took off. And the way they were going, I said, this is not right. They lead me in the wood. This is not right. This is not right. And this is not right. And I said, I didn't have no choice but sit there and ride. And lo and behold, I saw the light. And you can't tell, I can't express how I felt when I saw the light and that road which we had come upon. My father never mentioned it to me, and I never mentioned it to him and I never thought about asking him until after he was dead. Was he somewhere watching? Because it's just beyond me to think that man would leave a 10-year-old boy out in the woods and not be watching somewhere. But he never said anything about it. I didn't either. But I'm going to say this. My father was a minister, and we come from a religious home. And I have always, if you had asked me when I was 7 years old, what was I going to be when I grew up, I would have told you. It was just in me to know that I was going to be a preacher. And evidently, my father saw that in me, that's what I was going to be, even before I knew. Is that because everywhere he went, he would take me, and he went to different church assemblies. He went to every church. There was no such thing as just. I didn't know there was a difference between Baptists and Methodists and Holiness. I just know they did it a different way. But he carried me to all churches. I was involved in all those ministries. Went to them, saw it. And I said that to say, come back to the story, is that he never mentioned that time that whether he was there or not. I don't know, but I just want to believe that he was. And that was when I was 10. Let me back up a minute. When I went to school in Cullioca, and I told you there was a 2-room school, and we had to ride the school bus. I had a sister who was 18 years old when I started the the school, and she was only in the eighth grade and 18 years old. And I have a story that I want to tell after this that I think that is interesting and would help uh, motivate anybody who reads the story. And I went back to say that because can you imagine being 18 years old in the eighth grade? But anyway, we after that incident, like I said, I continued to work on the farm. And then my father moved again, and we moved to Columbia. But even in moving to Columbia, uh, he would get me back out to the farm to work on the farm because we were very poor. I have to say that we were very poor, and we had to make whatever ends meet for however late. So I would go back out to the farm to work and be hired out even during the wintertime. And then in 1957, Bishop G.W. Garrison from Alabama had a church there for the spiritual church in Columbia. Every time they would come to Columbia for any convention, they would stay at our house. Even if we stayed in the country where we did, because my mother was one of the greatest cooks in the area. I guess every son calls his mother the best cook, but my mother could cook. And every time they would have a church social or anything that where food was cooked, they wanted to know where Anna Jane's food was. But anyway, he came and it coming in 1957. My father, jack of all trade, but didn't really have a job. Bishop Garrison said there was an ordinance here in Alabama that all houses in the city limit had to have indoor bathrooms. And my father could do that, so he came to Alabama in 1957 and worked for 2 years and made more money than I can ever remember him making in his life for the family. But he didn't have a car that would sustain him being able to come back and forth, coming back and forth from Alabama to Tennessee every weekend or every other weekend with taxing on it. So we finally talked my mother into moving to Alabama. So we moved to Alabama in 59. And also 59, I'm 15 years old. And soon after we moved to Alabama, he had been working and making money, but soon after they passed an ordinance, or the ordinance had been passed, but they started enforcing it, that if you didn't have a license, you couldn't do the plumbing. He tried to bootleg it, I might call it that, but the licensed plumbers would see his truck and know that he was doing it, and after he just about completed the work, they would go and report him, and he had to leave the work, and they could come in and finish it. But being 15 years old, they're going to Mount Sinai Baptist, a spiritual church. There was a young lady there named Mary Jane, married at that time, and that lived on Springfield Avenue, down below. She would walk to the store and back and pass. And my mother was very strict. She told us not to leave the yard. My wife tells us she might say not leave the porch, but we couldn't leave out of the yard until she got home. And we being obedient children tried to obey what she said. But anyway, Mary would come by and walk into the store and all, and we got talking. And I can't tell the whole story, but anyway, before school started, we moved in August. Before school started in September, we had made a pact that we were going to be boyfriend and girlfriend. And I told her at that time that if she did not want to be married to a preacher, that we did not need to get started. And she said, yes, well, okay. And she's going to play the piano. And I have to tell you that she lied because she can't play the piano. But we got married, and if we going on, November will be 60 years that we have spent our life together. Amen. And we went to Carver High School for 2 years while we were there on Springfield Avenue, though we had to ride the city bus that was converted to school bus for that time, because nobody ride the bus for school children. But we had to pay at first 15 cents from September to December. We had to pay 15 cents each way, going and coming to ride the school bus. And then in January next year, we had to start paying 20 cents. Now my mother was working for Birch Anderson, the bookstore people that lived out in Rainbow City, and she was making $20 a week. And my father now was making hit and miss jobs here and there. So we didn't have a lot of money, and I went hungry many times. If I either had to spend my school money to keep from having to walk in, or either to go to lunch. Many times I did not have lunch. I have a brother who was younger than me at the time that that he had been sickly a lot, and so Mama made sure that he had both the money to ride the school bus and for the bus and for lunch. But because I was older and I had been taking care of myself for a while, I still had to try to do that. Uh, so in 1961, I was going to the 11th grade. The time was hard, so I needed a job, so I joined the army. My mama would not sign for me until the recruiter promised her that I would be able to go to school, actually go to school, not take a test, but go to school and get my high school education, because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted that. And the recruiter talked to my mother. She went to talk and said, yes, he can go to school. They have that system. But lo and behold, when I got to my duty station, and the people laughed at me. And I did have to take join the army in September '61. And when I finished my training, went to Korea, got on the bus to go to Korea. And I got a phone call while I was on the bus, and come back and answered it, because, by the way, I got married to my wife in November of '61. And she was expecting, and they called me on the phone and said this while I was on the bus, said, my wife just gave birth to a 6-pound, I can't think of how many ounces, baby girl. I told the first sergeant, my wife just had a baby, can I go home? And he said, your wife had a baby, you didn't. You get on that bus and go into Korea. So I did that. I followed the order. And my daughter was 13 months old when I saw her the first time. Praise God, other than pictures. When I got to Korea, though, they carried us all the way up to almost to the DMZ, what they call the line that separated North Korea and South Korea. And we were the last unit there before you crossed over. And my welcome address to that company was, hello, you welcome to first to the 40th Army. You see that bridge over there. You see the bridge. Said, if Charlie comes from, they call North Korea Charlie. If he comes across that bridge, you will die right here. A 17-year-old boy that he is going to die. But anyway, the Lord saw fit, blessed me that I was promoted fast and ready for promotion to E4 before I left Korea and coming back to the station in Fort Hood, Texas, where God again blessed me to be promoted. I did not stay E4 for about 2 or 3 months until I was promoted to E5, made all the way up to rank, and just fast forward. By the time I did the Army 7.5 years, I was in E7. Wow. That's before during the Vietnam era time, but I had never been to Vietnam. In 1966, I was in Germany, and I was come down to Vietnam, but I was in school and asked my commander asked me that I wanted to go to Vietnam. I want to stay, and I told him no, I want to stay. So he got me off the order, and I was not bothered again until I volunteered to go to Vietnam in 1970 because I wanted to make a sergeant major, and I thought that I would not be able to make sergeant major without going to Vietnam, and I had only been in the Army only 10 years at that time. So I went to Vietnam. I was supposed to have been in tanks, but God saw fit that the unit that they sent me to had no tanks. So I was put in the artillery unit, which is the artillery unit, the platoon commander, the platoon leader, did not ride a vehicle or did not shoot guns, and all I did was deliver parts. So I can say is that I do not know that personally anything that I have fired a gun at anybody personally or killed anybody. But there were people who were in tanks that saw me, knew that I was a tanker, and wanted how back in that unit being in artillery when I was a tanker. And they tried to get me moved over, but because about 3 months after I was there, they did bring tanks into that unit. But God saw fit that He kept me out of that, and I stayed there for 1 year. I do not have any war stories to tell. At first, when I came back, I wanted to pick up some, but I said, no, I don't need to do that. So But I say, I give all glory to God. Come back. But then, let me go back. When I would come back from Korea, I'm jumping around. But when I came back from Korea, I didn't have a lot of money and trying to take care of the wife and children, so I sent all my money home. I had to ride a bus from Oakland, California to Gadsden, and from Oakland to all the way to Texas. There was no problem. But when I got to Texas, the bus driver looked at me. I was sitting about the third seat back and said, "Soldier, I have the uniform, so you got to move to the back of the bus if you don't want trouble." He said, "I'm not gonna make you, but if you don't want trouble, you need to move to the back of the bus." So I did. I moved to the back of the bus because I couldn't afford to be busted or get in trouble because I had family to take care of. I put my family above all my thoughts and anything about me because I took care of my family, and so I moved. And from then on, you to get anything to eat, you had to either go to the back of the restaurants or the windows for them to pass you out a sandwich. So I, I bought enough food, potato chips and stuff, so I didn't have to either do that. Made it home. And then coming back from Vietnam, 1970, uh, 71, uh, on the bus, riding, got all the way to Arkansas. The bus driver never told me I needed to move to the back of the bus. But when I got to this one restaurant, he told me I couldn't go in. He said, "Without causing trouble, so he'll bring the sandwich if I want to." I said, "No, that's all right. I'll give them my money if I couldn't go in." But those are the things the situation. But basically, those are the only two situations that I've had, and they were not in the army. They were the only army incident I had was when I was in basic training. The soldier that slept above me was a white soldier, and we became very good friends while we were there. We walked around and we went everywhere together. We went to the movie together. We went to church together. Everything, everywhere we went. He didn't go. He never went to town to Augusta, Georgia. We went Fort Gordon, and I never went. I didn't ever know what it looked like other than the bus ride there. And we found out when we were leaving that we had to ride the same bus, leaving and going to the same bus station. And so I was telling him we can ride together. And I noticed on the day we were getting ready to leave that it looked like he was aborted. But I never thought about it. But finally he told me, he said, "I can't ride with you. We can't ride the same cab." And that kind of hurt me. It really bothered me then that we had spent that kind of time together. But when we left the post there, we could not be seen together. But I don't know his name. Now I can't remember his name. But I never heard from him again. But for us for 2.5 months, we were almost inseparable. When you saw one of us, you saw the other. Those were the only three cases that I've had as far as race relations that I know of that I had in the Army. I retired. I did make a first sergeant in 1979, 3 years before I retired. It's on the sergeant major list when I retired. They were going to send me back to Germany, so didn't want to go back to Germany under conflict, so I got out at 20 years, 3 months, and 19 days. That got out and military at 37 years old, and knew that I was going to get a job at the Anderson Army Depot. But at that time, you had to stay out of the Army a year before they could hire. So I had to do all the job here in Gadsden. Some people might have saw me cut grass with Mr. Jack Lowe, had janitorial services. But still, I'm taking care of my family. I had a daughter that went to University of Alabama. If anybody knows about tuition, you know that tuition don't play. So I took the job but after a year, they did call me to come to work at Anderson Army Depot. Now I was a DA in the military. I've been to several schools, leadership abilities and all. But when they hired me at the depot, I'm thinking I'm getting one of the kind of jobs. And when they tell me what I'm going to do, when I got home, my wife asked me what they hired me for. I mumbled something, and she said, "What you say?" And I mumbled again. And she said, What are you saying?" I said, "They hired me to clean up bathrooms." And she said, "You took it?" I said, "You all want to eat, don't you?" And so, yes, I got the job cleaning up 2 bathrooms and billing 400. And it's the Army Depot. and I worked in, and the bathroom was in a mess, and because I had used been a had secondary jobs in the military as cleaning up and having clean barracks. I knew I was an experienced janitor, so I knew how to clean the bathroom. And even if you ask somebody today who were in the 400 building at that time, said that their bathrooms had never been that clean before or after that I cleaned. But I only worked there a week doing that. And after a week, I got a call from personnel saying that I wanted to be the COR for the janitorial contract on the depot. And they had no idea what that was. And I was carpooling with a couple of friends of ours that we had that made friends with before when we moved out. And I told them, I said, they called me today and told me on a Friday. They told me that they wanted me to be the COR for the janitorial. And they said that cannot happen. They can't do that. They have to publish that job. I said, now I don't know about what they're supposed to do. All I know is I got a phone call. She said somebody pulling a prank on me. I said, no. The person who called me, I know, is he's the director of the roads and grounds. So I know that he wouldn't do that. And they said, well, he can't do that. They just somebody playing with you. So kind of that was on Friday. So I went to prayer and asked the Lord, is this real? Is it true? And so Monday they called me again and said, come over and they're going to explain to you what you're going to do, but the job won't be open for until another 7 days. It didn't matter. So come over and told me what the job was. I got back in the car with those young ladies and told them, I said, no, I got the job. I don't care. I don't know how you did it. And don't care. All I know is that I have a job. And it was a job that it didn't, the pay grade was not that high. But, it gave me the opportunity to do the ministry that God was prepared me for Ebenezer. I had, at that time, 47 buildings that I had to inspect, but I only had to inspect five at that time a day. And that was just to see that the contractors were doing the job. That's all I had to do. See, I could do that job in about an hour. I could check all 5 buildings within an hour. I would always do what we call the building, but in pretty bad shape. But he gave me the ability over the years. I stayed there 25 years, and over the years, if when I became a pastor, if I wanted to, if someone called me on the way to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, that I would be able to go and call in and say that I'm not coming in. I'm going to take his business, and it was always that way. And just about 2 years before I retired, my son also got a job, and God blessed him there to get an electrical engineer who also spent University of Alabama. And he had to be at work at 6 o'clock instead of 7. So we were riding together. So I was coming in, and at 6, and my boss come in and said, John, how long you been coming at 6 o'clock? And I said, well, about 6, 7 months at the time. He said, I want you to count up every day that you came in at 6 and put that down to comp time. When you have to go to visit the sick and all, you use that time. So God blessed. I mean, I was truly blessed at that time. I hope I'm not getting him in trouble by saying that. Whether he was allowed to do that or not, I don't know, but he did it. And so I did not have to use my personal leave to do those things. And I know that was a blessing from God.
Yeah.
At 62, I retired from the depot, not because I was mad at the depot or anything. I wanted to be a full-time pastor, and because that was my passion. So I passed. I did not say that I did start pastoring in 1986 at the Great Ebenezer Baptist Church, and I wanted to be a full-time pastor, and I did, and God blessed us there. I can say that I don't believe that there's another church who has there may be one as good, but never one better for the people and for the blessing. We have never had a quarrel at business meetings. We have never had this disagreement, a church disagreement or quarrel. Now, people are going to be people. You're going to have different things with people, but never the church. And the church has always supported me. They have always been. If there was a problem with anybody, they were always on my side. And I'm saying my side, but it's the right side. And so I'm bragging on Ebenezer, and for every person who's ever been to Ebenezer, who is there now. I need you to know that I'm so proud of you. I know what to do. And so I'm still there. Uh, this past the 1st of February, first Sunday of February, I've been there for 35 years. And God has truly blessed us there. That's my story uh, that I'm telling. I didn't intend to tell that much because I have a story to tell, and I hope that you all don't get bored with the story. But I mentioned my sister, Myrtle, who was 18 years old in the ninth grade. Well, that was the reason why she was 18 years old. And if you listen to the story that she tells, these are her words of her story that she told. And she had a note at the beginning. And the name here is James, but anybody can say this for their family. And he says to all the James descendants, know that you come from a strong family. You are not perfect, but with the help of God, we have overcome things that should have torn many, that would have torn many others apart. So when times get hard, and they definitely will, don't you dare give up and quit. Let my story inspire you to keep on going and to reach even higher goals. Whatever you want to achieve, don't let anyone or anything stop you from doing it. We expect great things from you, and we know you are not going to disappoint us. The story begins. My father, who we call Papa, was John H. James, and my mother, Mama, we was Anna James. Papa was, as many poor black males were during this period, a jack of all trades. He worked on the railroad, and he was a sharecropper, a carpenter, a plumber, an electrician, and an auto mechanic, and a preacher. He had somewhat of a restless spirit, and this caused him to move around a lot and to also move the family from house to house a number of times. Mama did laundry and ironed and cleaned white folks' house. She was the glue that held the family together. Yes, they were poor, but in spite of the hardship, life threw at them. They trusted in the Lord and firmly believed that no matter what God was, God was always going to make a way. They didn't just go to church. They daily strived to live by the things the Bible said. They were not perfect, but they worked hard to establish a home built on strong, solid Christian values, love for God, family, and others. This is the heritage they gave to their children. 8 told. Where? Page. Okay. On December the 11th, 1931, I was born in, and I'm talking to about my sister now. On December the 11th, 1931, I was born in Culleoka, Tennessee, where Culleoka is about 10 miles south of Columbia, Tennessee. Well, Columbia is about 47 miles south of Nashville. So Culleoka is about 47, 48 miles south of Nashville. Hopefully that helps. Sometimes after I was born, Papa moved the family to Scribner's Mill, where, don't even ask. Just know that it was about 3 miles from Culleoka. I spent my early years growing up in Scribner's Mill. Keep in mind that in Tennessee in the 1930s, everything was segregated by race. There was white families who lived near us. We played with the white children until they got old enough to learn from their families and society that they were superior and that we were the N-word. Why do I mention segregation? It's important because the schools were segregated. The white children who lived in Scribner's Mill attended the white school, and there was a bus that came and picked them up and took them to school. The nearest school for black children were in Culleoka, which I have already said was 3 miles away. There was no bus provided for the black children, so we had to walk to school. 3 miles to get to school and 3 miles to get back home. Can you imagine a child, 6 years old, walking a total of 6 miles a day to be able to go to school? School would start in August, and we had no problem walking to school then. However, Mama would only let us go to school while the weather was good. During the late fall and winter, we did not go to school, so it was impossible for us to do the work required to get promoted on time. It was not until I was 10 years old that I completed the requirement to move from primary, that is now kindergarten, to the first grade. All my classmates I had started out with had all left me far behind. As I think about it, it's hard to comprehend 11 years old in the first grade, 12 in the second, and so on. At 18, I was in the eighth grade, while my original primary classmates were graduating from high school. My eighth grade teacher told the other girls in my class not to be around me or associate with me at school if they wanted to finish school. She believed it would be a bad influence, or she believed rather I would be a bad influence on the younger girls. Oh, how that hurt. But looking back, I, I can somewhat understand it because it was so much older. I was so much older than the rest of them. They were 14 and I was 18. Although I can understand a little better now, at the time, it hurt. She says, but God. In 1949, J.W. Bergson, my future brother-in-law, was graduating from high school, and he gave me an invitation to attend the graduation ceremony. Since I had never been to a graduation ceremony before, I was excited to go. Words cannot truly express what I experienced that day. I know that it was truly the hand of God at work. The ceremony was the most beautiful sight I had ever seen. I was so inspired. It's as if I can still picture everything almost exactly how it happened. I even memorized the class motto and can still remember it. The class motto was, be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity. Be ashamed, be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity. The motto, the motto and everything else that happened touched me, touched the very core of my spirit and left a lasting impression that I have never forgotten. I know that that day God gave me a vision. It was at that time I made up in my mind that I was going to high school, no matter how old it was, no matter what it was going to take, no matter the hardship. I was going to wear a cap and gown, and I was going to walk across that stage and get my diploma. 19 years old in the ninth grade, off to high school I went with overwhelming odds against me. I went. No money, but I went because there was still no school bus available. Sometimes I had to stay out of school and work in order to get enough money to ride the service bus and to and from school. But I went. No encouragement, but I went. Laughed at and talked about behind my back and to my face, but I went. Oftentimes, things seem dark and hopeless, but God has a way of providing just what you need, just when you need it. I thank God for my cousin and her mother and father. They let me stay at their house many nights so that I could be able to go to school the next day. God rest their soul, but God. I was on a mission. I had missed a number of days from school during my ninth, 10th, and 11th grade years because I had to stay out and work. But I kept going. You see, Mama and Papa barely had enough money to support the rest of the family. So I had to support myself. But I knew that God was with me and with Him on my side. Nothing was going to keep me from finishing school. When I made it to the 12th grade, I made up in my mind that I was not going to miss one day of school and that I was going to make all A's. With God's help, I accomplished both. I didn't miss a day of school and I made all A's. To top it off, I finished in the top 10 of my class. What a mighty God we serve. Graduation day. It's so clear I can still see it now, with emotions so overwhelming I can hardly describe them. The day had finally come. I put on my cap and gown to line up. The music began to play. With my head held high, I marched down the aisle, a member of the graduating class of 1954. I take my seat, sitting there. Everything seemed like a dream. Now the time has come to hand out the plume. We stand. Finally, I hear Myrtle James. And when they call my name, I walk across that stage. I walked across that stage. And I'm saying it the way she's had to read here. I walked across that stage and received my diploma. Hallelujah. I'm 22 years old, but that doesn't matter. The vision God had put down in my spirit in 1949 was come to pass. Yes, God is good. The journey was not easy, but you have been with me every step of the way. I give you praise now and forever, but God. Now I know the plan that she had the script verse here that all of us know. Now I know the plan that I have for you, declared the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I will listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. Jeremiah 29, verse 19 through 13. I hope I'm not boring you with the story, but this story to me is inspiring to me. In 1962, I applied for a teaching position at the IBH daycare, and I got the job. Then the director, after promising me the job, told me that I did not have enough education and proceeded to hire his friend's daughter. Of course, I was hurt and disappointed, but I was determined not to let this get me down. When I applied for the position, I was already working as a maid. So after I did not get the job, I had settled in my mind that that was what I was going to be. But if I was going to be a maid, I was going to be the best maid I could be. So I worked hard and made sure whatever I did it with excellent in an excellent manner. As I said, I had resolved that I was going to be a maid. I was not looking for a job, but one day Mrs. Mary F. White, a mother at my church, called and asked me if I knew that Mr. Porter, the principal of College Hill Elementary School, was hiring teachers today. She then told me that I should call and ask about a position. When I called Mr. Porter, he told me he had filled all the 8 positions. He then called and said, I'm going to hire you anyway, but God. I started working as an aide in 1963, working with the first through the 4th grade teachers. Working at this level, I saw that the children need, what the children need to know when they started school in the 1st grade. At that time, children started school in the 1st grade. There was no kindergarten in the school system. Little did I know that God was setting me up for something big greater. I worked as an aide for 9 years. And then one day, one of the board members of IBH called me and related that there was a vacancy at the center and asked me to apply for it. Because of what had happened before, I was uneasy about calling, but Mr. Porter convinced me to call. He told me that if it did not work out, that I still would have my aide's job. I applied for the job and got it. When I was hired, the same man who had not hired me before threatened to leave the board alone with several other members. I was trained for 1 week and was told that the position I would be filling was not a teaching position, but an executive director. The board members who had threatened to leave did not leave. They simply stayed on in name only. They did not perform their duties, but simply put all the responsibilities on me. They dumped the total operation of the school in my lap, and I felt as if they were setting me up to fail. They didn't realize who was on my side. God had already brought me this far, and I knew he was not going to leave me now. I read my Bible, had my devotions every morning, prayed, and put my trust totally in him. At first, I did not know the operation of the staff at the center, two teachers and a cook. One of the teachers left, which was a good thing. I then had the opportunity to hire a head teacher, and she turned out to be a jewel. I only had a budget of $3,000 for the operation money for to run the school and to be able to sell the program to the community. In spite of these initial problems, I was determined, with God's help, to be the best director I could be and to show the board I was qualified for the job. I implemented an entirely new structure for the center. Before the center was seen as primarily a daycare or babysitting facility. Because of my work as a teacher's aide in the elementary school, I knew that I knew what the teachers were looking for in the children when they started first grade. Therefore, I set up an academic program with a curriculum that was conducive for young preschool age children. The teachers had to have lesson plans every day and course actions, goals, and objectives. As word got around about the changes in the center, the average enrollment went from 35 to 40 to 85 to 100 with a waiting list. We increased the number of teachers from 2 to 4 and hired a floating aide. The staff also included a cook and a janitor. IBH became a model for others in the surrounding areas who wanted to start a daycare center. Teachers in the elementary school raced to get the children from IBH in their classes. Just think, I did not have a degree, but God. I did, however, have sense enough to know that there were things I did not know. So I needed to learn them. I earned credits from the Columbia State Community College and Tennessee State University downtown campus in early childhood education. Also, I earned the credits in child philosophy and management at Lexington, Kentucky. I still did not have a degree, but my salary was more than the other daycare directors in the area who had degrees. In addition to earning credits, I had to learn how to complete all the required local, state, and national reports. When working with children and receiving government funds, everything must be accounted for. I had to account for every ounce of food and milk for every meal that every child received each day. I was the center treasurer and bookkeeper, responsible for all monies, collecting children fees, paying the staff, keeping track of all bills, and, and paying them, etc. Many of these duties should have been the responsibility of the board, but because they were angry that I had been hired, they refused to cooperate and left everything to me. I did not let them stop. I did not let that stop me. I kept telling you, I keep telling you, I knew God had me. A few years before I retired from IBH, I received notice that the center was going to be audited by federal auditors. Normally, when an audit is conducted, they only audit records in operation for the past 5 years. However, I was informed that we would be audited for the past 10 years. The auditor came in and basically took over. They moved me out of my office and for a week went over every penny that the center had collected and spent and every report that had been submitted for the past 10 years. A few weeks later, the auditor, uh, excuse me, a few weeks after the audit was completed, I received a congratulatory letter from the auditors stating that every report was in order and not one penny was unaccounted for. Oh yes, by the way, the board member that did not hire me those many years ago and had threatened to leave when I was made director came to me and said that he was sorry and that he had been wrong. He told me that I had done a great job. He then became one of my and the Center's biggest supporters until he passed. But God. In September of 1960s or 1996, I retired from IBH after 21 years. The program was nothing like the one I became a director of in 1975. In 1996, the center had an afternoon program in place. We had bought an adjacent house and had paid with it with the rent collected. We had remodeled the center and playgrounds twice. We had secured grants for monies, school programs, for numerous school programs. We had generated an operation budget of over $100,000. We were working with the city to give the center an adjacent lot for additional parking and many more accomplishments. However, our biggest accomplishment by far were the children. With God's help, we had developed a program that helped give young black children a head start in life that they would not have received had it not been for the center. I know for certain that everything I have shared with you was only accomplished by the grace of God. He ordained the event of my life, and he took the things that this enemy meant for evil and worked them out for my good. Even when I thought I was carrying the load all alone, he was always there. I know I would not have graduated from high school if it had not been for him. I know for certain that he sent me to IBH, but he knew that when I went the first time, I was not ready for the test. He wanted me to do. There were some life lessons I needed to learn. So he sent me to College Hill Elementary School to work with the first through the fourth grade teachers, preparing me for what was to come. But what if I had rebelled and gone off on my own? Oh, the blessing I would have missed and the glory God would have received. It was also God, in his own time, who sent me back to IBH and who never, ever left me. I didn't make a lot of money, but there was no retirement plan. I did get one established for future directors. I had to work many long hours. I had to overcome prejudices and discrimination. But in spite of everything, I would do it all over again. I loved what I was doing. There wasn't a day that I hated to go to work. Yes, monetarily, it paid little, but the investment was worth it. No price can be put on what the children learn and experience at IBH. For everyone reading what I have shared, be encouraged. God is the same yesterday, today, and forever. What he did and is still doing for me, he will definitely do for you. Yes, trials and tribulations are definitely going to come. Just keep trusting. Just keep praying. Just keep praising. And one day you'll be able to tell your own story of how you overcome. And then your testimony will be, but God. And I know that was long. It was. I hope you thought it was worth listening to. I am very proud of my sister. And I just in closing, I want to go back that we moved to to Alabama. We moved in Springfield and Green Pasture. Uh, and the house that we moved into had no. It did have water, but it was not. It was just regular tap water. No, not hot water, and did not have a bathroom inside of it, even though that my father was doing, but the man that owned the house would not pay my father to put uh, put a bathroom in, and we could not afford it. After staying about a little less than a year, we moved to what people call Sixth Street Projects, and we were told that was a bad place, and we did not need to go there. But when we moved there, I'm going to tell you, it was like for me moving. When I think about condos today, it was like moving from a log cabin to a condo. Uh, we had running water, had bathtub, bathrooms inside, and the heat that heated the whole house. Which before I had to cut firewood for the heaters and all. So Sixth Street was an uptown place for us, and and my mother and father had instilled discipline in us that we could not run over the 6th Street Project. Even though the family said it was, I never saw a fight. I never seen anybody get killed or anything because we could not leave the house. There were, if you've ever been to project, there they got apartments on each side of it. We lived in 412B, North 6th Street. There was an A apartment, then there was a C apartment. I never stepped foot in either one of them while we lived there. My mother made sure that we had to stay at home. So it was up the street, and we were glad. I mean, I never been so happy in my life. But I mentioned the 6th Street Project because uh, just because we lived in the 6th Street Project don't mean that you're going to have to stay there. We did not move there to stay. I have a sister, a brother, Charlie, who is 3 years younger than me, and a sister who is 3 years younger than him, 6 years younger. My brother was the first one to he enrolled in the first class of Gadsden State Junior College in 1965 there, and he completed the college Gadsden State in 67. Went to Jacksonville and finished Jacksonville. Enrolled in the Air Force, the Army, and went to OTC and became an officer. Spent 30 years in the military, coming out as a colonel. My sister, Shirley, got an associate's degree and was the administrator for the North Side of Gadsden State Junior College for over 32 years. Retired, and my sister, my other sister Johnny, who came to Alabama and lived with us. Also, did not have a high school education. Finished high school, went to and got an associate's degree and worked. So I just want to encourage your place where how you come. You don't have to stay there. You ought to have a vision. You ought to, first off, trust in God and ask God to lead and direct your life and know that He has something better for you. You don't have to always be looking for a handout. Be willing to help somebody else to rise above. Like I said, is that for us, the one place that everybody told us was bad for us was the stepping stone. That we said is that God gave us an opportunity to start there and to move forward. And I'm proud of my family. I'm proud of my brothers and my sisters and all of us. We have a family. You know anything about us. We are too close knitted family that we take care of our family. Thank you for listening to me. I hope this will inspire you to go forward. Trust in God. Put your hand in God's hand and let Him lead you. God bless you.
Amen. Thank Reverend James for a wonderful story. We really got two for the price of one. We got some interesting reflections about his own life, but even more powerful in a way, the confidence of his sister. I've seen her as a very beautiful woman. I never knew her story. Almost brought me to tears. So we thank God. I grew up at the other end of Tuscaloosa Avenue, Project 11th Street project, and there was always saying it takes a village to raise a child. Got a great upbringing. Thanks be to God for that. But nevertheless, it's a great way to cap off our Black History reflections of a native son. Thank Reverend James. And we wish him Godspeed in present and future endeavors.